Welcome to the Partisan Podcast. I'm Ben, this is George, and today we're discussing the real reason jiu-jitsu athletes are broke. So before the podcast, we've basically had a chat and identified 3 reasons we think that most people believe jiu-jitsu athletes are broke, or there's not much money in the sport.
Yeah.
So the first reason is the sport is too small and too niche to make money. What do you think about this reason? The sport being too small, too niche, it's too obscure for athletes to make an income through the sport.
This is actually something I believe for like the longest time. And I think something that you kind of changed my mind on is essentially the internet and how that changes everything. Like I only thought only the very top athletes could make money online. But is that sort of what you see?
So yeah, I believe the same thing for a while, that the sport was too small. There just weren't enough people in that. I think if we were limited to, as an athlete, only working in your local area, that would be the truth.
Yeah.
So if you could only make money, we'll talk about this later, but if you could only make money through teaching classes and teaching seminars in your local town, that's probably the truth, that it's too small and too niche. Now we've seen a massive rise in jiu-jitsu in its popularity in the last 5-10 years especially. Now we're at the point where there are millions of people that train. And there are millions of people that love training. People love spending money on their hobbies, whether it's golf, whether it's frisbee, whether it's making coffee in an expensive espresso machine. There's so many hobbies that people have where they actually love spending money, they love spending time on this hobby. And jiu-jitsu falls into this category. So I definitely don't agree that the sport is too small or too niche to make money.
And it's basically the internet that's changed that, right? I mean, before the internet, you can only teach in your gym. But now you can teach essentially to the whole world. It's infinitely scalable.
Yeah, it's infinitely scalable, which we'll talk about, which is why we're in such an interesting time and such an interesting sport where I don't think people realize the potential that's out there.
Yeah.
The second reason that, and this is a very hot topic at the moment, the second reason that people believe that jiu-jitsu athletes aren't making money is that it's the fault of the promotion. So there's been a lot of criticism towards the IBJJ for not paying their athletes, particularly the ones that medal in the world championships. There's been a lot of criticism. There's been a lot of criticism of ADCC maintaining the $10,000 win prize.
Yeah.
Obviously that's a big reason why CGI kicked off in the first place, was Craig was unhappy with the athlete's compensation. It was maintained at $10,000 for a long time. And you have a lot of promotions that don't pay athletes at all. So this is a very interesting discussion. It could be a whole podcast episode on itself. I just want to briefly talk about the way you think and the way I think about this in terms of promotions paying athletes. So how do you feel do you think that's the main reason why jiu-jitsu athletes aren't making money? Do you think it's a contributing factor?
I think there's a misalignment or misunderstanding. I think the traditional idea of a promotion, so lots of people understand this as they're the promoter, therefore they should be promoting me. That's their job. My job is to be the athlete. Their role is to be the promotion. But the reality in the modern age is you have to put it in your hands and be your own promoter, and then you can come together with the promotion to boost your brand even more. But ultimately, if you just think of them as the promoter and the sole promoter, and that's their job, the reality is we are still in the early stages of the sport. We don't have the NBA to be this massive marketing machine for you. So you, in essence, need to be that marketing machine for yourself.
Yeah. I agree. I definitely agree. And I think it's an interesting discussion. It makes it hard to talk about because we don't have transparency around the numbers that the IBJJF make, that Flow Grappling make, that ADCC make. We just don't have a very clear picture on how much money they make. But I definitely agree with Craig in a lot of ways, and I agree with the athletes in a lot of ways that they should get paid more. Like, I'm definitely on team. Like, I think the promotions definitely need to pay the athletes more for competing, especially at the highest level. Having said that, so now that we've just agreed, like, athletes should get paid more, and I think it's a great thing what Craig's doing. Putting that aside, I think if you're an athlete and you're going to solely rely on the IBJJF, on Flow Grappling, on ADCC, changing their business model to make money, I think you'll be waiting for a long time, and I think you'll be disappointed. Because the fact of the matter is they need strong enough incentive to change their business model. They also need to make enough money, and for them that might be a huge amount of money for them to consider paying athletes more. And you can agree with it and you can disagree with the ethics of it. Like I said, without transparency of the numbers, it's tough to say. Like I said, I do agree that the athletes should get paid more. But I'm seeing a lot of athletes boycott IBJJF competitions, which it's good to see athletes standing up for themselves. It's good to see athletes choosing events like CJI because they're getting paid more, and they're saying, you know what, I have a choice as an athlete as where I compete. I'm going to choose to go to the organizations that pay me. I think these are all excellent things.
Yeah.
It shows we're moving in the right direction. But ultimately, if this is your stance, you believe that it's purely the promotion's fault that I'm not making money, it's outside of your control now. And if something's outside of your control, it's very hard to influence it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you see this with the very top UFC athletes as well, right? Most of them, unless they're on like superstar Conor McGregor level, I mean, even he does lots of social media, to be fair. But then you see the other guys like Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski. These guys all have their own YouTube channels. And the bigger they grow their following, the more the UFC is willing to invest in them, the more leverage they have with the promotion, and it just feeds in on itself.
Craig made a really good point of this in an old video, and he said, if you're an athlete, you are now a business, and you need to understand how business works. And the business of Flow Grappling, if you're working with Flow Grappling as an athlete, say they invite you onto Who's Number One, you need to understand how they make money. Okay, how does Flow Grappling make money? Flow Grappling makes money when new subscribers join their service. Okay, so if you're an athlete and they bring you onto Who's Number One on the undercard, if they get no new subscribers and they don't get any more engagement or any more views because of bringing you on, they haven't made any more money. They don't see you as valuable. You could be an absolute beast on the competition mats, but if you don't hit the numbers, they just purely don't see you as valuable.
Yeah.
Right? If you're, let's a crazy hypothetical, you're Logan Paul. You might be a bit of a wrestler, you can barely grapple, maybe you're a blue belt.
Yeah.
But if you're a Logan Paul, they would pay him so much money to do a Who's Number One.
Yeah.
Because think of all the new subscribers they would get, think of the views they would get, think of the engagement they would get. So it's not about who's best at jiu-jitsu, it's about who understands how the business works and who understands leverage.
Yeah.
We talk about Conor McGregor. The reason why he gets paid so much is he has the leverage.
Yeah.
He's built his own following. He's got a huge demand behind him. Whenever he fights, the numbers are insane. So he says to the UFC, you need to pay me what I'm worth, or I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or I'll stop fighting.
Yeah.
And what are they going to say?
Yeah.
They have to say yes.
Yeah. And just to your point as well, something else that illustrates what you were saying earlier, I don't know if you follow the UFC too much, but even CM Punk got on the main card of the UFC with an 0-0 record, I'm pretty sure, in terms of MMA.
He was.
And people were really like angry, like how dare they, like what's happening here? But like the UFC didn't do that as a favor because they like CM Punk.
No.
They did that because that guy's bringing a lot of eyes to the UFC. He has something like 500,000 followers. I don't know actually how many followers he has, but it's a lot. Like there's definitely a reason why he was put on that card.
Yeah, to make money.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a business. And here's the thing. You can disagree with this and you can say it shouldn't be the case, but it doesn't help you as an athlete to spend too much time thinking about and focusing on what should be the case. We can talk about utopia all day. We can talk about merit-based competition all day. It doesn't change the reality. The reality is you're dealing with the business of Flow Grappling or the UFC. They might make ethical or unethical decisions. It doesn't matter. But the better you understand how business works, the better the more leverage you have when it comes to dealing with these organizations, which is a whole different topic. But I do think that is worth discussing because there's a lot of attention right now on these organizations. But I think we're going to get into this in this episode, but we're going to talk about where the attention should be as an athlete in terms of what you can directly control, where you don't need permission from the Flow Grappling to make money. You don't need permission from the ADCC to make money. This is kind of the message I want to push, is taking ownership and taking accountability of your own career. I think that's worth doing. The third reason we spoke about, George, that you brought up is that a very interesting thing I hadn't really thought about, and it's that if you're a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete, you probably got into this lifestyle because you're very passionate about jiu-jitsu. You love training, you love competing. It's almost like, we compared it to the artist, right? You're like, you love the art form, you love the practice, and you're not thinking about money as a priority. But then I'm sure a lot of people are in this situation where they've chosen this lifestyle, they've chosen this direction, but either sooner or later they realize it actually need to make some money to fund this lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I need to pay my coaches, I need to pay for the training camps, I need to pay just for food and rent. When we're talking about money in this, I want to talk about this too. When I mention money in this episode, I'm talking about making a livable income. Okay, I'm not talking about making millions of dollars. I'm not talking about Lamborghinis. I'm talking about, can you afford to pay rent? Can you afford to pay your food? Do you have like a modest, at the very least, a modest or comfortable life?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, my perspective is, I feel like, everyone that plays basketball is very aware of the NBA, for example, and everyone that plays competitive basketball loves basketball, but they also understand, well, if I get into the NBA, I'm making $20 million a year. Like, everyone just has that awareness. No one gets into jiu-jitsu thinking, I like this, but also I can't wait to make millions of dollars. Like, no one gets into this sport thinking about money at all. And what happens, people start getting addicted to it. You start getting good at jiu-jitsu. All of a sudden, you're a local competitor that's known. And now it's snowballed where you're actually wanting to make this your living. You're getting opportunities maybe to teach, things like this. But now you're so deep into it that now you're maybe in your mid-20s, maybe even you're getting close to your 30s. And the reality is, the older you get, like, you don't really care about it when you're living with your parents or when you're single and just living paycheck to paycheck, doing a part-time job
it's fun,
maybe.
right?
It's all just fun, and you don't have that kind of stress. But the older you get, the more you realize, like, hang on, like, life is actually really expensive. If I don't want to be in a slave job my whole life, I have to start doing something about this. But the problem is, like, man, like, it's so hard to actually get good at jiu-jitsu. It takes so long. It takes almost everything in terms of your energy.
Yeah.
And now you have to learn about business.
Yeah.
And it's not the most fun thing to learn about business. Like, do you want to practice, like you said, some De La Rivas, or do you want to learn about marketing?
Yeah, if you have 4 hours to kill, would you rather watch a Danaher instructional, train with your mates, go to the beach, or would you rather sit down with a Business 101 book?
Yeah.
Most people take the beach, which is completely understandable. But I guess that's kind of where I want to come in. I want to position myself to be able to help you guys as much as I possibly can through this content, because I'm the weirdo with the business book.
Yeah.
Like, for whatever reason, I find that fun.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings us to what I think is the real reason and the truth that jiu-jitsu athletes are currently not making as much money as they could. And that's that nobody's ever sat you down and explained to you the process of making money in this sport. Because it's a very new sport, and because, like you mentioned, these athletes are so focused on competing and getting good at their craft that there aren't many people that have taken the time to understand how the business works and the optimal path and the optimal strategy to be able to make a livable wage through the sport. Yeah. So I just quickly want to talk about the current ways that athletes make money in the sport. And we can just share our thoughts briefly on, like, the standard model and how we feel about it. And then I'll talk about the model that we've been recommending to athletes and the advantages to that model as well. So the standard model as an athlete, most athletes start by teaching classes, right? You can get paid, let's say $50 is a round number for teaching a class. You've got teaching private lessons, you get paid a little bit more, get paid maybe $100. For a lot of athletes we've spoken to, they talk about seminars as almost being like the gold standard. They're like, man, if I could teach a seminar, that would be incredible. If I could get 30, 40, 50 people, that would make my life. For them, that's the gold at the end of the rainbow, is a seminar, right? And what I want to talk about today is I want to bring it back to kind of Business 101, because I think this is what's been missing from the sport so far. So Business 101, George, is that you make money by providing value. Money is an exchange of value, okay? The way I think about value, the way I think about quantifying value is solving problems for people in some way, right? Every business is basically solving problems for people. So the way we quantify value is how important is the problem that we solve, and we multiply that by how many people we solve the problem for. That's the way I see value exchanges. Now, the most successful, most profitable businesses in the world solve very important problems for huge numbers of people. Okay, if we look at this basic equation and apply this to jiu-jitsu, this is how we develop the strategy. So with that framework in mind, think about when an athlete teaches a class, they are spending an hour of their time to solve problems for about 20 to 30 people. Okay, so they're paid accordingly to that. It's, $50, $100, what have you.
Yeah.
If they're teaching a private lesson, this is interesting because now you're solving problems for only one person, but you're solving a lot more problems. You're solving very personalized problems. You're giving them all of your attention for 1 hour, 2 hours. So because even though you're only working with one person and not a group, the importance and the quantity of problems solved is much higher, so you're paid a higher rate.
Yeah.
Okay. Now looking at seminars, similar to the class model, you're teaching perhaps 30, 50, maybe even 80, 100 people for a longer period, 2 to 3 hours. And if you're teaching a seminar, the gym owner who's hosting you and the attendees of the seminar have decided that you're worth a higher rate. They'll pay $50, $150, $100 for that experience, where normally for a class they wouldn't pay that much. Yeah. So they've decided you're so good at solving problems that you'll get a higher rate for it, and you'll have the opportunity to solve it for more people, which is why athletes are getting $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, depending on the athlete.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the big light bulb moment that I've had that I'm trying to communicate to a lot of these athletes, is that if you, instead of charging money, of getting paid for your time, you focus on solving problems at scale online, everything changes. Everything changes. You can spend a weekend filming and solve problems for 10,000 people. Scalably, at scale. Yeah. You can solve problems for 20,000 people. Here's the crazy thing. You can film over a weekend, and 6 months later, when you're asleep, when you're at the beach, when you're hanging out, you're still solving problems for someone through that content you filmed 6 months ago. And because you're not limited to a class of 30 people, you're not limited to a seminar of 100 people, you are not limited at all. It's infinitely scalable. It's an insane opportunity to make money. An insane opportunity. This is what I've realized. And I know it might sound basic to some people. It might be a huge revelation to others. But here's the thing is I see very, very, very few athletes doing this. Very few.
Yeah.
And I'm spending all day, every day trying to convince athletes to do it.
Yeah.
So here's the sticking point, right? A lot of people will watch this and say, yeah, Ben, that sounds good, but I'm not fucking Craig Jones. I'm not John Danaher. No one even knows who I am. Yeah. I can't possibly do this. And my answer to that is you absolutely can. Because all you have to do is solve problems for a group of people.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. And there are examples, if anyone wants to message me, I have examples of purple belts in a town you've never heard of, in a gym you've never heard of, you've never seen them compete. They are making 6 figures online by doing this. Because they've identified an avatar. They were like, I help 30 to 40-year-old hobbyists learn how to wrestle.
Yeah.
This is who I help. And all of my content is made for 30 to 40-year-old hobbyists that want to learn how to wrestle. And I offer them, and I solve their problems for free, and I solve their problems for money. I do both.
Yeah.
And these people are making 6 figures easily, while a lot of athletes at the highest level are not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is true.
What do you think?
I think that's the biggest light bulb moment is like a big barrier for people. It's, I'd love to sell instructionals online, but I'm not Craig Jones. I haven't won anything yet. I'm not the top 1%. But the big light bulb moment for me as well was actually people that have never won anything significant. Some of them are purple belts, some of them may be black belts, but have never really competed in any serious way. Like they've never won
some of them don't compete at all.
BJJF.
Yeah,
they've never won an 80cc trials, let alone the trials themselves.
Yeah.
And they're making like an absurd amount of money.
Yeah.
Some of these guys.
100%.
Whereas you've got 80cc gold medalists that haven't, like they're essentially broke.
Yeah. 100%.
And which is like sad, which is like, that something about that seems wrong, and there's obviously some form of gap there, and the gap could be due to a lot of reasons.
Man. That's the market, supply and demand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if this is where you want to go next in terms of the conversation, but I think lots of people listening would be thinking, well, okay, this sounds great. Like, how do I actually get there? Like, can you give me like a few steps?
First,
where do you start?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a 4-step process that we'll talk about in a second. But first, I want to kind of double down and really try and convince whoever's listening to this the fact that you don't need to be world class to do this. Okay, I want you to think, if you're listening to this, you're an athlete. I want you to think about the average population of your gym. Okay, the gym that you're training at now. Because these athletes are so deep in the rabbit hole of winning ADCC, of winning world championships, that's their focus. That's all of their attention are on the top 5%, okay? And understandably, and also completely understandably, if you were to look right now at who's making the most money, you would look at Gordon Ryan, you'd look at Craig Jones, you look at Danaher. So I completely understand anyone who's watching this and saying, like, the only way to make money online in jiu-jitsu is to be world-class. I completely understand that. I'm going to try and convince you that that's not the case, okay? Look at the population of your gym and look at the average split. Even if you're in a very competitive gym, how many people in the gym actually compete on a very serious basis? 10%? 20% is high. 20% is high. If you're in 20% is a very high gym. Look at the 80%. The 80% are beginners, white to blue belts, hobbyists. And the reason why you guys are getting paid to coach is because you can solve their problems. The reason why the gym owner is paying you as an athlete is because you can solve their problems. Because their problems, relative to your skill set, are very basic.
Yeah.
It's, how do I escape them out? What do I do from close guard? How do I do a double leg? These are their problems.
Yeah.
And these are the problems that they want to solve. And these are the people with money to solve it too. They're hobbyists. They have full-time jobs. The athletes, the hardcore competitors in your gym, they are not your focus. If you wanted to teach them, if you wanted to make content about here's how to win ADCC, you have to be able to win ADCC.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you to make this content.
Yeah.
I'm telling you to make content that solves the problem for 80% of the room. Because your room of 80% hobbyists is the same as every other gym in the world. In the world. Online, every other gym, 80% of the audience are beginners with white to blue belt. And you can solve their problems.
Yeah.
You're already getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
You're getting paid to do privates. You're getting paid to do classes. This is the same thing at scale.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that convincing enough? Is there any shred of doubt that there's a good purple belt competitor right now that doesn't believe that they can solve their problems for the audience? I'm just going to reinforce it with one fact, okay? Part of this research that we've been doing is looking at the most popular jiu-jitsu content online. Henna Gracie's made thousands of videos on jiu-jitsu, thousands.
Yeah.
One of his most popular videos, it's got about 4 million views on YouTube, is how to tie your belt.
Yeah.
4 million views.
Yeah.
4 million people looked up Google, how to tie my belt.
Yeah.
And they clicked on the video and they said, this is really valuable.
Yeah.
Now I didn't know, I looked like a dummy because I didn't know how to tie my belt. And now I know. Thank you, Henna.
Yes. So I think what people that are watching, they might be thinking, okay, well, Henna's done that video on how to tie your belt.
Yep.
Also people can learn how to do an armbar from Gordon Ryan, from John Danaher, from Craig Jones, from the list goes on, right? Why does the world need another video of me doing an armbar or me telling you how to tie a belt?
That's a great question. The reason you can make content that's hyper specific to an audience, and you can do things. You have advantages that Gordon Ryan doesn't. You have time.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to connect strongly with a smaller audience. If you have a community group with 50 people, you can know all of them on an individual basis. You can help them prepare for competitions. You can answer their questions. You can send them videos.
Yeah.
That What's more valuable? Okay, say there's a blue belt out here. They've just got their blue belt. This is the target avatar. He's like 30 years old, just got a blue belt. Works in IT, makes 6 figures, loves jiu-jitsu. What's more valuable to him? An instructional from Gordon Ryan that's 8 hours long, 10 hours long, where he watches it when he has time. Maybe he doesn't have time. He doesn't have time at all to watch it. It's 10 hours long. Or a strong connection and mentorship relationship with a really good purple belt competitor online who's taking the time to review his match footage, who's taking the time to give him strategy in the direction that he should train, who's helping him prepare for competition, who's sharing all the wisdom and lessons learned from his competitive career. You know what I'm saying? Like for me, that's such a that's like that the product you're selling is different to the product Gordon's selling.
Yeah.
And also, Gordon is obviously an incredible coach, but he forgets what it's like to be. He's never been a 30-year-old blue belt who works in IT.
It's true, yeah.
Like, that's not a controversial fact. Gordon Ryan's never been a 30-year-old blue belt that works in IT. But if you're that purple belt, you remember what it's like to be a white belt. It wasn't that long ago, or a blue belt. It wasn't that long ago. You understand. You're like, man, here's how I learned it. Oftentimes, we've noticed this recently in a lot of different avenues. It's like a university professor teaching primary school kids. Yeah. It's like, is that the best person for the job? Like, it probably isn't.
Probably not.
Probably isn't, right?
Yeah.
But if you get a high school kid who's mentoring a primary school kid, that can be a really strong relationship and a lot of value. Sometimes more so, because it's like, hey, I remember doing my year 7 exams. That was a couple years ago. Yeah. Here's what helps me learn it. As opposed to the PhD physicist being like, oh, you've got year 7 exams? Like, so what, dude? It's easy. Like, how is it so hard for you?
Yeah.
So it's absolutely, and there's just so many people that have problems to be solved online in jiu-jitsu. So many people.
Yeah. I think something that you've sort of touched on in terms of value, it's not always that very specific and direct value of solving the armbar, because sometimes I can learn how to solve an armbar from a million different people, but I like you. Like, there's something about you that I can connect with, so I want to learn the armbar from you. And I learn better because I can connect with you. Like, that's even, like, you see that even on the highest levels. Something that was, not to keep bringing up John Danaher and Gordon Ryan, but but like, they have a very special connection.
Yeah.
They align in terms of the way they see the world, I'm assuming, or at least a lot of it, or at least the way they understand and see jiu-jitsu, they align on that. So they make a really good pair because they can connect on that level. Gordon Ryan really wants to learn from John Danaher, and therefore he gets the most out of learning from John Danaher. Not that many people see the world or jiu-jitsu in the way John Danaher does, and they don't want to. Yeah. And that's where you come in with your unique personality, character.
Maybe you're funny. Maybe you have other attributes about you that people just resonate with other people. People learn in different ways.
Yeah. Sometimes it can literally be, you've got heaps of tattoos. I've got heaps of tattoos. We've got something in common. I can connect with this guy.
We both work in IT.
Yeah.
Definitely, absolutely. And I guess another answer to that question is the clear answer to say, okay, if that was the case, if Gordon Ryan and Danaher were the gold standard, right? And it's like, why do we even have coaches then? Like, why do you have a job at your gym? Yeah. We could just sit down, we could just bring in a TV. No, for real. We could bring in a TV and we could just watch John Danaher all day and just train. Yeah. And there's no coach. Yeah. Obviously that's silly. Yeah. This is the same thing. Yeah. The other thing is Gordon Ryan DVD costs $150 US. You could sell a product for $20 to 1,000 people. Yeah. And you could make $20,000 over a weekend. Very achievable. Like, very achievable. Yeah. So it doesn't, you can be a fraction, and you can even say, you have advantages being the little guy. Your advantage is saying, hey, Gordon Ryan doesn't give a fuck about you. He doesn't even know your name. I know your name. Yeah. Like, I'll give you a call. I'm gonna release a body lock instruction. I'm just phrasing it. You could say, you're gonna release a body lock instructional, and it's 3 hours long, and it's $20, and you say, here's a money back guarantee. If you watch this and it doesn't improve your body lock, you can personally message me, send me videos. I will help you until your body lock is good.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll give you your money back.
Yeah.
I'll personally help you.
Yeah.
That's not something that Gordon Ryan's offering. It's not something that Danaher's offering.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of advantages, and there are ways you can utilize these advantages. But then again, it comes back to business. This is actually a business question.
Yeah.
It's like, why should I open a burger restaurant if there's McDonald's? It's like, you're not the same thing, man.
Yeah.
You're not selling to the same avatar. You don't have the same product.
Yeah.
It's the same. This is business. I know this is my interest. Like, we're talking about jiu-jitsu, but we're answering an age-old business question that's actually already been answered.
Yeah.
So we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
You mentioned some like a key word there that maybe people won't pick up, and I love my definitions.
What's the key word?
But you mentioned like, who's my avatar?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is that something you want
those tall
to
blue
define
guys,
and talk into, talk about? Or?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
An interesting thing
and again, it comes back to I'm so much in these business books now that I kind of bit of a nerd with it.
Yeah.
When I say avatar, this is a really good point. You can't be everything to everybody. If we're positioning you as a business, and if you want to make any money, even just an income, you need to understand that you're a business. This is step number one. If you're an athlete, if you're a coach, if you're teaching private lessons, if you're selling content, you are a business first. So let's consider you a business. A business needs an avatar. An avatar is the person whose problems you're solving, okay? Particularly when you're getting started in business, you can't be too vague with this because the competition is too fierce. You can't be like, I want to solve problems for everyone. Then you're solving problems for no one.
Yep.
You need to, and the more hyper-specific and hyper-focused you are on the avatar, the more power you have because you can speak directly to that person, directly to them. Gordon Ryan has a very wide avatar. He just goes, here's how you get a really good mount system.
Yeah.
And it's very wide. He has the opportunity to do that because of the status that he has. You don't have the status to do that, so I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
You need to think about who do I like helping the most. A good example is Romina. We're working with Romina now. She loves teaching kids. She loves talking to parents about kids in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And she loves helping out kids coaches and helping them solve their problems to do a better job.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, there is almost zero content for this.
Yeah.
Almost zero content for kids getting better at jiu-jitsu, for parents who want to support their kids in jiu-jitsu, and for kids coaches. Her company is called Grapple Up, by the way. If anyone's curious, her company is called Grapple Up. Incredible company. This is an example of an avatar.
Yeah.
And when she makes content, she's not making content for the 30-year-old IT wrestler. She's not making content for the competitor who wants to win ADCC.
Yeah.
She's like, this is my content, this is my avatar. She speaks directly to kids. She speaks directly to kids' coaches. She speaks directly to parents.
Yeah.
So if they're scrolling through their phone and they see Gordon Ryan teaching an armbar, they're like, okay, cool. And then they see Romina. And she said, hey, kids coaches, are you struggling to maintain the attention of your class? Here's 3 tips you can do. You go, fuck, I'm a kids coach.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. And then you go home and then you go to your class and you teach it.
Yeah.
You implement the tips that Romina has given you.
Yeah.
And you're like, Romina's the best.
Yeah.
The next time she posts content, you watch it. The next time she posts content, you watch it. The whole time, you're getting direct value from Romina because you are her avatar.
Yeah.
And if you're not a kids coach, she doesn't care if you watch her stuff. It's fine. It's not for you.
Yeah.
It's not for you, brother.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by avatar.
Yeah.
And it's a really important, I'm glad you brought that up because it's a really important, again, it's business 101, but it gets missed when we talk about jiu-jitsu. And we see gyms do this too. The most successful gyms have an avatar that they work with. And they don't care about anyone outside the avatar. If they train with them, cool, that's fine. But their marketing, they're very specific in who they talk to. And that's how you have an effective business, particularly when you're getting started, is by having a specific avatar.
Yeah.
As specific as possible, where you even, when I went through this with Cal Greasley, who is our graphic design consultant, we made a specific avatar, so specific we gave him a name.
Yeah.
We said, this guy's name's James. He's a student.
Yeah.
He's 22 years old. He likes watching UFC. He likes scrolling on TikTok. Like literally, like we made
very
it.
specific.
We made, dude, it has to be. It has to be.
Yeah.
Psychologically, if you're imagining a group of people, it can be hard to talk to them.
Yeah.
If you make up, and this is what they do in business, they make up an avatar who's very specific, And then when I make content, I make it for James. I make it for the 22-year-old student who likes the UFC.
Yeah.